Hello students, let's come back to our social studies textbook, that is chapter 12, Indian Democracy. Now dear students, what do you understand by democracy? We have already studied it. Democracy is government by people, for people and of people. And so today let's see what are we going to study, how the procedure of election is in our country. Also, we are going to study about the voters, about the democracy and the voter elections, how the foundation of democracy is. We are going to also study about media's role in print as well as the electronic media. So please be with me as I begin the class. So India has the highest number of voters in the world. Population-wise, India is the largest democratic country of the world. This amazing democracy is more than 6 decades old. During this period in India, there has been many political upheavals and ups and downs. The Indian democracy is sustained due to the dedication and insight of its citizens. We shall study in detail the characteristic features of Indian democracy. So students, what is that? India has the highest number of voters in the world. We know population wise we are the second largest country, and so obviously India has the highest number of voters in the world, and population wise India is the largest democratic country in the world. Okay, democratic country we are talking about. This amazing democracy is more than 6 decades old, meaning almost about 60 years of old when we are talking about this democracy. During this period in India, there has been many political upheavals and up and downs. There have been many problems, there have been struggle, but whatever it has been up and downs, with that, the Indian democracy is sustained due to the dedication and insight of its citizens. So because of the dedication of the people, the commitment of the people, the Indian democracy has been sustained, and the credit goes to its citizens. We shall study in detail the characteristic features of Indian democracy. So what are the characteristic features of this Indian democracy? First, election in democracy. How and what is the style of election in this Indian democracy when we talk about? So let's see that. One second, students. So election in democracy. In the world, many countries have democracy. In spite of democracy, there exist differences. In the world, many countries have democracy. But what happens? In spite of democracy, there exist differences in governance of these countries. So the government, how the country has been governed, that differs in each country. In a democracy, a voter casts his own vote. So, of course, we have studied in chapter 8, 9 and all, that in a democracy what happens? A voter casts his own vote. He is giving his own vote to whomsoever, whichever party he wants. The right to vote remains the same in each democratic country, though the country's governance may vary. So, what is that? The right to vote in each country, whichever country there is a democracy, that remains same, the right, but the governments, even though governments vary, the governing pattern of the country may be different, but the right to vote remains the same. The democracy thrives through the voting process of the voters during the elections. So what? The democracy thrives through the voting process of the voters during the election. So what happens? The number of elections, number of voters vote, it depends also on that. Our country has parliamentary system. Now what is this parliamentary system? Parliament is a national institution representing the people. Parliament is the national institution representing the people, and the Parliament of India consists of President, underline, the Vice President, Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. Make a bracket. So what is this Indian Parliament consist of? It is of the President, Vice President, Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. As mentioned in earlier chapter, Rajya Sabha is the upper house of the Parliament and Lok Sabha is the lower house of the Parliament. We have already studied in the previous chapter. Rajya Sabha is the upper house, whereas the Lok Sabha is the lower house of the Parliament. The state has the legislative assembly. The state has the legislative assembly. And what is this legislative assembly? We have already studied in the last chapter. Each state has a legislature and it is called legislative assembly. Legislative assembly is the lower house. Legislative assembly is the lower house. And then so the state has its legislative assembly. Some states have legislative council also. Some state has the legislative council also. And now what is that? The other house of the legislature is called legislative council. Okay? The other house is called as the legislative council. Example, Bihar, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, etc. States have two houses and there the legislative council is the upper house and the legislative assembly is the lower house. We saw already what is legislative assembly, and so legislative assembly is the lower house. Gujarat state does not have a legislative council. The state of Gujarat doesn't have legislative council, whereas Maharashtra, Bihar, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu have these houses. Okay. A voter is at the center of forming a Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha and Legislative Assembly or Legislative Council. So a voter, the person who votes, is at the center of forming Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha. We have studied Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, the houses of the Parliament. Okay. And the Legislative Assembly or the Legislative Council. In our country, all the governing bodies are elected through voting. In our country, all the governing bodies have been elected through voting. Thus, democracy is realized by elections. Thus, the democracy, the largest democracy that we are talking about, is realized by the elections. Now, democracy and voter. A voter is very important in a democracy. A voter is very important in democracy. Our country has universal adult suffrage. We have studied about what is the universal adult suffrage. We have studied in, I think, chapter 8 or 9 where we have studied about it. But still, once we are reminded about the adult suffrage. So what is it? A person of 18 years of age or above who is enlisted in the voters list can cast vote. So what is adult suffrage? The person who is above 18 years of age and whose name is there in the list of the voters, whose name is included there in the voters list and has the right to cast his vote. Okay, he has the right to give his vote. A person who has not declared bankruptcy, is not mentally unstable, can vote without any discrimination. So the person who is not declared bankruptcy as well as he is not mentally unstable, who is not okay mentally, okay, can without any discrimination can cast his vote, can able to vote. The Constitution guarantees a right to vote even amidst illiteracy, poverty and many similar issues. Okay, so person who is among even if there is a illiteracy, poverty, whatever issues can be, the person has a right according to the Constitution to cast his vote. The system of universal suffrage, adult suffrage, is based on the principle of, underline that, one person, one vote. Students, we have already studied a person cannot vote 2 to 3 times. And therefore, when the person goes to vote, you see that on the second or the third finger of the person, there is on the one of these fingers, the voter's finger, the blue ink has been put. Why? It takes time to go. It takes time to go, and by putting that, we know that the person has already voted in one place. It is the duty of every citizen to vote without greed or fear, without any greed. You are not supposed to, when someone gives you the promise that if you give me the vote, I will give you so much of money, or if you do not vote me, I will kill you. No, students, you cannot vote under these situations without greed or fear. When you have the fear and if you are giving to a particular person, that is not okay. A voter should be aware and vigilant of his right. You should know what your rights are. Being a voter, being an Indian citizen, the Constitution has provided a right to vote to each of its citizens without the discrimination of caste, creed, religion or education. So our Indian Constitution gives us the right to what? Right to vote without any caste, without any discrimination, without any religion. You are free to cast your vote. Voting is an important process in democracy. In our country, there is a universal adult suffrage. Voting is a right as well as a duty of citizens. Every voter should exercise the right to vote. So voting is an important process in democracy, and in our country there is a universal adult suffrage, that is the person who is above 18 has the right to vote. And so voting is a right as well as a duty of the citizens. Every voter should exercise the right to vote. Okay, students, every person has the right, and without any fear or anything, the person has to vote. Now, election, the foundation of democracy. Election is the foundation of democracy. A festive environment is seen during elections. The festive environment, you see that whenever the elections come closer, we see the people go for the, make their party known to the people. They go about proclaiming to the people. Also, we see the festive environment. The people can evaluate their representatives during elections. Any person who has the prerequisite to contest elections can do so. Candidates belonging to the political parties as well as the independent candidates who do not belong to any political party can contest election. So students, every person has the right to campaign, okay, and also the person who has prerequisite to contest election can do so. Those who feel any person who feels so can go ahead, and the candidates belonging to parties as well as independent candidates who do not belong to any political party also can contest the election. In an election, the winning candidate of any party or belonging to a coalition, that is a joint party of the parties, come to power. In a democracy, only with the support of the people one can reach to power. So what happens in a democracy? Only with the support of the people one can reach to the power. If the people are not supporting, you will not get their votes, you will not be able to go for the campaigning and so on. And so students, it is the support of the people is required. In our democracy, Parliament is the apex body of the basic foundational block in the Gram Panchayat. In our democracy, Parliament is the apex, it's the head of the body, and the basic foundational block is the Gram Panchayat. Elections are also held in the institutions of self-government like Gram Panchayat, Taluka Panchayat, District Panchayat. Even over there, the elections do take place. Candidates in these institutions of local self-government are chosen through elections. So the local self-government, local bodies on the taluka, village, taluka, district level, elections are conducted in municipality, in towns, and municipal corporation in cities. Election is the lifeline of a nation's democracy. Election is a lifeline of the nation's democracy. Elections are very important for the political parties as well as the candidates. So elections are very important for the political parties as well as the candidates. Election is the barometer of democracy. Election provides an opportunity to a voter to evaluate the consistent candidates. So students, elections are very much important for the political parties as well as for the candidates, and it is like a barometer of the democracy. It evaluates also, and the election provides an opportunity to a voter to evaluate the consistent candidates. Election ushers In new political setup or political waves, election gives a picture of a country's social and economic environment. So election gives us the picture of the country's social and economic environment, how the environment has been, how the support of the people has been. Election decides the future of the government. Elections are contested by political parties, independent candidates, as well as a coalition of the political parties. Coalition by joining another party of the other people, and so of the political party, independent candidates. Election can be contested by the political parties as well. In parliamentary democracy, the party or a coalition of the parties having majority of winning candidates forms the government and comes in power. So what happens? These people, they form their government and come into power. The power is obtained as well as maintained by the support of the people. Election being soul of a democracy, it is essential that it is transparent. What happens? We have seen election being soul of democracy, it is essential that it is transparent. There shouldn't be any cheating and it should be done in a proper manner. Okay, students, I am going to stop the class over here. Today we studied about the election in democracy, how each voter is important, and without any caste, creed, discrimination, he has to vote. We also studied about the democracy, how the voter is important in democracy, what is adult suffrage. Adult suffrage is a 2 marks question. I am going to stop. In the next lecture, we shall study about public opinion in democracy. Have a good day, students.